Okay, so welcome back to the Mormon Truth videos in the Mormon Truth Video Library on the Dodger Game channel. We are on episode 4 of the Understanding Mormonism, or Introduction to Understanding Mormonism, especially for youth. So when we left off, we were starting to discuss the DNA studies versus the ancestry proclaimed to be Israelite of the Lamanite people, or American Indians, with their patriarchal blessings saying they come from Manasseh, one of the tribes of Israel, and proclaimed by Moroni Joseph Smith that they were the principal ancestors of the American Indians. However, this is now not really what is being claimed in the preface to the Book of Mormon, as that was changed by the church in 2006 to say that they were among the ancestors. So the DNA in the Native American people essay on the Gospel Topics essay found in LDS.org, basically apologetics being disguised as fair and balanced essays, and the church has changed its tune on the ancestry of these people, on their history, and not going along with what it says in the Book of Mormon, that the land was, washed clean by the flood and prepared and preserved for the seed of Lehi, and that they, that it was to be their land, and that it was protected from the, knowledge of other nations, that they might possess it unto themselves. They're kind of trying to throw all that out and say, no, they just mixed into a large existing population of people that apparently, they hint, may have come across the way the anthropologists have been telling us all these years, thousands and thousands of years before Adam would have been in the garden or leaving it. So that's where we left off, and let's take it from there. If you haven't listened to the previous video, you might want to do that. There's a lot of good content regarding that subject. And of course, going into my channel, you will find many videos that get into documenting the specifics on these issues that we're kind of almost summarizing here, introducing, but not giving all the documentation. That way we can cover more material, and then you can go back and look on the specific videos where we document, where I document, and you can learn how I learned these things right out of the scriptures or other primary source materials. Because I'm not asking you to take it on faith. I'm saying you were given a brain, you've got one, use it. I've documented these things. Look at the evidence, use your mind, and see how it works out. Don't trust us for fools. Check it out. In the Mormon Truth Video Library on the Dodger Game channel, popping into the channel just left of the subscription button, which is of course found at the bottom of the video description. Let's get into it. Hello, the people in Egypt were not washed away. Babylon, Sumer, China, they weren't washed away. The American Indians weren't washed away. They survived, and they walked across, is what they say, Bering Strait after an ice age, like, 20,000 years ago, 15,000 years, whatever, something like that. Before Adam leaving the garden. It kind of blows out the Genesis thing, And if you look, the church has changed its story on how this stuff happened. Book of Mormon used to say, in the preface, that it came from the Nephites and Lamanites, who were the ancestors of the American Indians, the primary ancestors. Now it says they were among the ancestors. The Book of Mormon says nobody else was here, basically. It says, I promise to save this land for you, protect it from the knowledge of other nations, that you may possess it unto yourselves. This is there, like in 2nd Nephi. So they live there from the sea east, the sea west, the sea south, the sea north. I don't even know where the sea north is. But they'd spread over the face of the land. They have these civil wars. How can you do that if you've mixed into an existing population? How could there be an existing population if the Jaredites came here right after the flood of Noah wiped out everybody? Well, there wasn't a flood of Noah. There wasn't a lot of things. And so when you first hear this stuff, people will say, well, it's a bunch of lies. That's not what they told me in primary. Unfortunately, it's very shocking when you find out that everything has been built on a story that doesn't seem to match up with the facts. It doesn't match up with science. It doesn't match up with history, And it doesn't match up with itself. They can't keep their story straight. Jesus can't keep his story straight. He tells the brother of Jared, Ether chapter 3, you're the first guy that's ever seen me. Look at Moses 7, 1,000 years before, he was face to face with Enoch. They had a city together. They all lived together happily for 365 years. During which time they came down from the city of Enoch. It doesn't say when it lifted up exactly, other than it had to be lifted up, later, within 365 years. But during which time they go and visit Adam and all the patriarchs and Enoch, everybody that would have been in the city in the first place, in the valley of Adam-on-Diaman in Davies County, Missouri. That's section 107 in the Doctrine and Covenants, like verse 54. 240 years after they had the city of Zion going on, they go to Missouri to have Jesus visit them when he already lives with them. The Book of Mormon, the Book of Moses gives a genealogy of these guys, just like Genesis. Has all these patriarchs dying. Hello? There's like 4 generations of them that would have been in the city of Enoch and translated. How can they die if they're translated? Anyway, I've got that in the video, so we go into the details. This is a summary giving a story. So, Joseph Smith was this treasure seeker guy. He was into the seer stone thing, but that's not the worst of it. Like you see these knives, magic knife, but you ever heard of black magic? They're like drawn magic circle around the area they're digging, and then there's like an enchantment because it's treasure's being guarded by a demon, so they sacrifice like a black goat or sheep or even a dog, slitting its throat and walking it around the circle until the thing bleeds to death. I probably shouldn't even be telling you this. Yeah, it's an animal sacrifice. Of course, the Jews basically did similar things. They just kill the animals kind of like that. Except maybe we're walking around a circle and they burn them, burnt offerings. So yeah, so that's black magic. And anyway, necromancy. Joseph Smith got involved with the Methodist Church, like in 1828. Yeah, 8 years after the supposed first vision, Jesus telling him not to get involved with any of these. Of course, he also says in the thing, I was in the company of a Methodist minister, and I told him the story, and then he said, it's all the devil, and they all persecuted me. Well, Jesus just supposedly told him not to follow after these guys anyway. Why is he with a Methodist minister? But there he is, going to the Methodist Sunday school, and some relatives of his, I don't know what their names were. I've read it, in journals, even their own journal in the Methodist Church there, why they kicked him out of their Sunday school, because he was a known necromancer. That means, like involved with the spirits of the dead, all kinds of stuff. So that had to do with appeasing the spirits of dead pirates or whatever, guarding like Spanish treasure that they thought was buried places that they were digging for in the middle of the night. So in other words, they're practicing witchcraft. I think is possibly an appropriate term, practicing magic, black magic. When you're killing things, it's not not nice. So maybe they just wanted a barbecued dog or something. I don't know. So you don't see this in your church manuals, but there are plenty of records there, and it's not just a bunch of Christians that wanted to badmouth the Mormons. It's like his own mom, their family members. The people that follow Joseph Smith, if you get the picture, remember the 3 witnesses following the girl with the seer stone, within weeks of Joseph Smith, well, he bailed out because his fake bank, went under. They didn't have the money to back, the stuff, the notes they were peddling, I guess. So he takes off with Rigdon, and by the time he gets back, a girl with a rock is leading the church. I mean, think about that today. You imagine a 16-year-old girl's leading the church with, saying she's getting revelations out of a rock. If she said she's getting them off an iPhone, she's got the Celestial channel, maybe it'll be a little more, believable, right? But the brethren at the top of the church, they know all these stories. It's not just stories. They got documentation. They were hiding that seer stone in the first presidency vault. They didn't really think it would go over well. They excommunicated like BYU professors, like Michael Quinn, for instance, for telling on them, for writing books like Early Mormonism and the Magic Worldview. Anyway, you're going to want to look at the videos that document all these things so you can step by step see the history and see the scriptures. See why you get theme-based scriptures that don't, lessons that cherry pick scriptures so you don't notice things that are problematic in the scriptures. The more that is correlated and controlled, same thing that Jehovah's Witnesses do. They have Bible study, but 90% of it's out of their Watchtower publication, and then they got certain scriptures. And if people give the wrong answer, then they got, like ostracized. So, of course, in Mormonism, what's the worst sin you can commit? Is it like, something horrible? No. The worst thing you can do, supposedly, is not believe it's true. Yeah. So, in other words, if you notice the factual evidence that, hey, it's not the way they told me, or hey, wait, this doesn't really make sense, or that Book of Abraham, I do a video on it, and it's not about the fact that, it's 1,800 years off and all that stuff, but it's about the linguistics. He says things like, I was in the land of the Chaldeans. Well, the Chaldeans weren't there for another 1,000 years, but the Bible's got the same anachronism in it. And in the language of the Chaldeans, Egyptus means forbidden. Well, the time that Egyptus would have been there right after the flood was before the time of Babel. There was no other language supposedly to the story. Plus, the name Egypt is a Greek word. Greek didn't exist at the time. And then he says, Jehovah says, Abraham, my name is Jehovah. Abraham's name was Abram at that time, supposedly in the Bible. And the name Jehovah, it was invented by a Catholic priest in like the 13th century. Okay? That didn't exist. There was no name Jehovah. It's and I show in like on my Abraham videos how that name was created out of like blending certain portions of two different Hebrew words. The words Elohim and Adonai. Elohim means the gods. It's the Heavenly Father's official supposed name in Mormon theology is the gods. And Lord, or my Lord, that's Adonai. And the Hebrews didn't have like vowels and stuff, so his name was like YHWH. So they turned that into Yahweh. But they weren't supposed to say it because it's irreverent. It's too sacred to say his name. So they said a title like the gods, or Elohim, or my Lord, Adonai. So this Catholic priest kind of combines those and then turns it into a Latin, a Latin version, and it was similar to Jehovah. That's the anglicized anglicized version. And they didn't have a V and a J then. They had like a W. And this was like something different between Yahweh and Jehovah. It didn't exist. Kolob. The light from our sun comes from Kolob, sending the energy to our sun or something. Okay, maybe it's a bizarre scientific principle we haven't understood. Yeah. There's Pharaoh. Pharaoh means great house. It doesn't mean king by royal birth. If you read the book of Abraham, watch my video and then you'll see it. And you can look at it and it shows the scriptures. And you can read them yourself and see, oh, okay, so this is completely false. This is completely false. This never happened. This didn't exist. This word didn't exist. This language didn't exist. The Jaredites are saying Jesus Christ. That's two Greek words. 2200 BC. Greek didn't exist. French didn't exist. You got Jacob saying, brethren, adieu, in Jacob 7. It's like saying, Abraham had a cell phone and he was texting his bros. And you say, they didn't have cell phones. Well, they didn't have Greek. They didn't have, the word Yahweh. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. All kinds of things that people at Joseph Smith time knew. They'd, seen the name Jehovah in, Tyndale's version of the Bible. So he thinks that, they used the word Jehovah back then. Well, he didn't know that it was the word they just invented a couple hundred years prior, not 3,000 years ago. So he puts in evidence. It's like leaving your fingerprints on the cookie jar, Sorry, the evidence shows things are not the way you told the story, Joseph. I think I'm going to end it there for today. The details are in the other videos. You see the documentation. Stay tuned for the next. Mormon Truth Video Library is featured on the Dodger Game channel, a completely unrelated sounding name. MTV Library out. Now I want to do I want to say something to everybody. Like I said, I'm trying to direct this, especially for youth. The EFY, especially for youth. So, I especially taught youth in the church. And when I was younger, you know, back in the days of Kurlons and Cumans and elephants in the land here, right, with the Jaredites, not quite that far back, but they had some speakers that were, maybe especially good speaking to the youth. Maybe they do now. I mean, like John, by the way, he still talk. So there was like George Durant, and he wrote a book called The Art of Raising Parents, which I read. And he was a talented writer and speaker. He was entertaining. He was good to listen to. And when I was younger, there was this guy named Paul H. Dunn. Have you heard of him? He was one of the presidents of the 70, or the first quorum of 70. So that's kind of a major general authority there. When the presidents of the 70, they got 7 presidents of each of the quorums of 70, I guess. At least of the first quorum. I think they've kind of tried to figure out how they're going to deal with this expansionism at this point, but in the massive church bureaucracy. But so he was one of the big boys, okay, and he was a really good speaker, and he had these inspiring talks, faith promoting. He had these, so he was like, you could relate to him. Youth, you can relate to some people maybe because they give good talks and stuff, but you tend to relate to people that are doing things that you think are cool. So, boys growing up think maybe it's cool to be a professional athlete or something like that. So anyway, he talked about his professional athletic career with, was it the St. Louis Cardinals or something? And then he says he gets called into the military. And I am not enthralled with military stories, I've got videos on a lot of the way the world's run, and I don't feel too good about a lot of it. So, at any rate, he's involved with the Second World War, he says, invading, various islands and so forth, against the Japanese forces. So he's got these incredible stories. He's got all this faith, and they're invading this island. I don't know if it's Okinawa or Iwo Jima or something, but they have these like barges, not like the Jaredite ones, by the way, and they're like carrying all these guys, and there's like waves of them. Like, have you ever seen like pictures of like invading Normandy or something? They've got wave after, they got like tons of these ships. And these are just like these transport things. They're like wide open, like a convertible car or something. And they just go and they land on the beach and the guys run out, And anyway, he says the first like 6 or he's in the 7th wave of them. He said every single one of them got blown out of the water, with artillery. And then they're on the beach and then, trying to survive. And then he has to run like 100 yards and his helmet gets like shot in half, but it doesn't hurt him. His equipment belt was like his canteen and stuff. A machine gun burst, knocks it off of him. His boot gets shot off, but he's unscathed. That's like one of the stories. I mean, there were a lot of these stories. So he was this really popular speaker. Like I said, like maybe, you've had churches, tapes from like somebody with tapes. Now they're CDs, or now they're actually DVDs probably, or whatever. From people, like at EFY, right? When I said like John, by the way, was popular, like, I don't know, 20 years ago maybe. So this Paul H. Dunn, so, they were inspiring stories. I mean, I'm not into the war thing, but it's like, wow, this guy had so much faith that, kind of like, Ammon chopping off all those dudes' arms, in the Book of Mormon. So, yeah, machine gun shoots his hat off and his belt and his shoe, boot, but he survives. A tank like drives over his head and turns around, but it doesn't hurt him. Or, all these amazing miracles. And then somebody related to like Boy K. Backer was fact checking him and finds out the guy was like never involved with anything like that. It was, he wasn't in the major leagues in the baseball. And basically, his whole story was fabricated, made up. Yeah. And so people had like experiences, like faith promoting experience. I don't know if people base their testimony, on like, I have so much faith because Paul H. Dunn had so much faith. And it was all malarkey. I don't even know where that word came from, but I don't want to use, words that you don't want to use. So, malarkey, fabrication, lies. And people had faith promoting experiences listening to this man's story, and they were all bogus. They weren't true. Anyway, so when this comes out, he gets turned into a non-participating general authority called emeritus status. So I don't know if he gets like paid retirement or what, you know, how that works. He's involved in some real estate scam too at the same time, I guess. Great talker. But it wasn't true. And that's kind of a lead-in. That doesn't mean, hey, okay, so that means everything in the Book of Mormon is not true. No, it doesn't. That doesn't mean it. However, the Book of Mormon can be fact-checked, a lot of things. And, you know, there are people that dwell on the fact that it says there were horses, says there were elephants, says there were honeybees, it says there were goats and sheep. And, you know, the Jaredites brought all kinds of stuff. Why? Because of the flood that God didn't repopulate the land in Joseph Smith's mind or something? I don't know, but it says they brought all these things. And Orson Pratt was saying, like, they had, like, whatever, mastodons on the barges or something. I haven't read that lately yet. He had some interesting stories. I read this huge book called The Marvelous Discourses and Writings of Orson Pratt. Very vivid imagination, or whatever you want to say, but, you know, he like makes it real. He's talking about life on Kolob and things like that. And of course, Kolob's a star, you know. But it was either on or near Kolob, or he made it real. Of course, if you really look into the theology, if you think, okay, you know, Bruce McConaughey said, well, Jesus only does what God did, his Father did, so that God actually was a perfect, sinless Savior on another world, and it's like, okay, well, show me somebody that screws up like me and still makes it right. There are a lot of convoluted issues. It's like, okay, Jesus made the whole universe. Like, look at Genesis. It says, okay, on day 1, he says, let there be light. You know, but he doesn't create the sun until like day 3. You know, day 2, divide the waters from the waters or whatever. But when you get to day 3, oh, let's create the rest of the universe. Okay, everything's like Earth-centric, and then, okay, we created all the stars. Like, they're just created to decorate, you know, the sky for this Earth. There's like trillions of stars, and they got planets around a lot of them. But no, that was just like a, you know, a side issue. Let's create like a quintillion extra things more on this day than we've done in the previous 2 days. Everything's like all around this Earth, like it's the center of the universe or something. It's ridiculous. So are a lot of things in there. So we're going to go through the Book of Mormon, I think, or at least some of it. Genesis, go through some of these stories. The point is, sometimes you can make something sound good and be really inspiring, and it's completely fabricated. And that is the case with Elder Paul H. Dunn. And that seems to be the case with various stories that we read that are completely impossible to take place in some of the scriptures, or ones that contradict each other completely as well. This has been a short session. MTV Library. I shouldn't say MTV. It makes you think of MTV, and I'm totally not into that sort of a thing. Mormon Truth Video Library, signing off. We got to check out some Paul H. Dunn things. YouTube. Great speaker. So is George Durant. Don't agree with everything he said, but he did a good job saying I do agree with some of the things he said. He talked about being nice to people. You, a number one Christian. That was a good talk. Good talk. There are good things taught in the church. There are good things taught. But most of the scriptures stories are R-rated. Shouldn't be watching R-rated stuff, said Gordon B. Hinckley. And scriptures are... chopping off people's arms is R-rated. Well, let's think about something nice. Blessing the children. Blessing the children of 2,000 men and their wives and children in about an hour. I did the math on that a long time ago. Didn't work out too well. Kind of like walking to the Red Sea from Jerusalem in 3 days, or even halfway there. Even with magic camels, it's a problem. Fact checking. It's an interesting thing to do. Help share the truth. Spread the Mormon Truth videos. Like them, share them.